Sometimes, I wonder what truly sustains the operation of our modern society. Is it technology, or is it electricity? Or is it our deeply ingrained trust, a trust in everything functioning as it should? Yet, in the moment when it all collapses, I realize just how fragile that answer is. That night, in my dream, the city where I live suddenly plunged into endless darkness. There was no warning, no foretelling, all the lights disappeared in an instant. People around me stopped in shock, staring at the sky that had lost its light, as if waiting for an explanation. But that unspeakable silence only allowed fear to spread. Phones had no signal, radios were silent, and all around was only deathly stillness. In that moment, I felt an unprecedented loneliness, as if the entire world had cut me off. The house suddenly plunged into darkness, children panicking, parents lighting candles to illuminate the surroundings, the subway train halted in a pitch-black tunnel, passengers whispering in the dark, the atmosphere oppressive. What does it mean to lose power? For most people, it's just a temporary inconvenience. However, as the darkness drags on, and even time becomes difficult to grasp, people's fear begins to turn into profound despair. Every corner of modern society depends on electricity, and when that electricity disappears, especially when even vital institutions like hospitals, banks, and police stations run out of backup power, everything loses its foundation. After hours of darkness, the rhythm of the city begins to derail. The usual orderliness, so taken for granted, reveals its fragility in the instant power disappears. The first to collapse is the transportation system. Without the guidance of traffic lights, intersections become battlegrounds of chaos. Drivers lose their patience, vehicles collide at crossroads, and horns blare incessantly. Pedestrians cautiously hover at the curb, trying to find a safe gap to cross the road, but without signal lights, every step is filled with danger. Without the support of electricity, the subway and trams cease to operate. Commuters trapped in carriages can only hear each other's low breathing in the pitch-black tunnels. There is no emergency lighting, no communication signals, only a suffocating silence. Every minute stretches into an eternity, and people begin to realize that they are completely cut off from the outside world. Meanwhile, the surface bus system has also been paralyzed due to the power outage. Passengers gather at bus stops, anxiously waiting, only to find that no buses will arrive. The streets are crowded with helpless faces, and people start wandering around, searching for other ways out. The air is thick with unease and anxiety, and those once calm citizens have now been consumed by this sudden chaos. However, the most terrifying thing isn't the paralysis of these transportation systems, but the gradual spread of disorder. As time goes on, more and more vehicles break down on the road, ambulances and police cars get stuck in gridlock, unable to reach accident scenes in time. Traffic accidents multiply, and the injured have nowhere to seek help. It's as if an invisible hand is choking the city. The chaos on the streets is just the tip of the iceberg, the darkness is silently devouring every corner of the city. The order we once took for granted now seems so fragile without electricity. Darkness brings not only fear but also a deep unease about the unknown. And when order collapses, so does human rationality. At this moment, I deeply realize how fleeting the brilliance of civilization is, and how real the chaos lurking in the darkness is. Darkness continues to spread, swallowing not only the light of the city but also its lifeline. The city's infrastructure, once our proud modern marvel, now appears so vulnerable. Without power, life-supporting equipment in hospitals grinds to a halt, refrigeration systems in pharmacies gradually fail, and medicines begin to spoil. Doctors and nurses in the emergency room do their utmost to save every life without electricity, but they are fighting not only disease but also an overwhelming sense of helplessness. In the laboratory, diagnostic equipment falls silent due to the blackout. Test results that should have been promptly delivered to patients now lie helplessly aside. Time ticks by, but diagnosis and treatment are at a standstill. Doctors anxiously await analysis data, but patients' conditions see no progress. The hospital is steeped in stifling tension, everyone can feel the invisible pressure. Without electricity, even the most advanced technology is powerless. Meanwhile, the economy, the lifeblood of the city, is being eroded by the darkness. Factory production lines have come to a standstill, computers and servers in offices won't boot up, and business decisions are forced into limbo. Internet and electricity-dependent businesses are paralyzed, and employees sit idly at their empty desks, unable to work or receive wages. As the blackout drags on, economic losses gradually accumulate, and many small businesses face the risk of bankruptcy. The situation in restaurants is even more dire. Without power, refrigerators and freezers in kitchens cease to work, food rapidly spoils, and the air becomes thick with the smell of decay. Even those customers who are willing to visit cannot enjoy warm meals. Tables are empty, waiters have nothing to do, and once busy restaurants now stand cold and silent. Banks are also in chaos. ATMs are out of service, electronic transfer systems fail, and long lines of anxious customers snake through the lobby, only to receive disappointing answers. With no power, the bank's internal network is down, making it impossible to process any transactions. At this moment, money seems out of reach, and the modern financial system crumbles without electricity. The shadow of unemployment begins to engulf the city. As businesses close down, many employees are forced into unpaid leave or layoffs. Families that depend on their wages suddenly find themselves in economic distress. Incomes plummet, and life becomes increasingly difficult. Anxiety and unease grow daily, and social tensions rise with them. Economic pressure is like a taut string, ready to snap at any moment. On the city streets, people wear anxious expressions, and housewives stand helplessly before empty refrigerators. In this darkness, we see the fragility of modern civilization. The infrastructure and economic systems we once prided ourselves on have become powerless in the moment electricity disappears. The blackout has not only robbed the city of its light but also its sense of security and hope. As time goes on, the effects of the blackout penetrate deeper, eroding not only the city's order and economy but also testing people's inner resilience and the social fabric. The initial panic and unease gradually give way to deep fear and despair. The once orderly city is now trapped in endless chaos, and that chaos begins to spread in people's hearts. On the streets, people grow restless, pushing and arguing, and the situation gradually spirals out of control. People start fighting over resources. Supermarket shelves are emptied within hours, and essential items like fresh food and bottled water vanish without a trace. Those who didn't secure supplies in time show anxiety and despair in their eyes. The once orderly shopping venues have turned into chaotic battlegrounds. Shoving, arguments, and even small-scale violence escalate under the cover of darkness. Outside hospitals, more and more patients wait for treatment, while medical staff do their best despite the lack of equipment and medicine. However, without electricity, their efforts become insignificant. Ambulances are stuck in gridlocked streets, unable to reach accident sites, while exhausted medical staff and patients' families are filled with despair as more lives are gradually lost in the darkness. Without electricity, laws and morals lose their binding power. Fear gradually turns into anger, and anger into violence. As night falls, looting and riots begin to appear on the city's outskirts. What pains me most is witnessing the degradation of humanity. In this crisis, the mask of civilization is torn away, revealing our most primal desires and fears. Masked looters plunder jewelry stores and electronics shops in the darkness, smashing windows with hammers and emptying the shelves. Neighborly watchfulness has turned into suspicion and hostility. People no longer trust each other, and with that, a sense of security vanishes. Unemployment, resource shortages, and the loss of security plunge society into a deep crisis. People no longer rely on the law but on force to protect themselves and their families. Armed citizens stand guard at their front doors, fearful that their property will be looted. The city seems to have entered a state of lawlessness, and the basic structure of society is gradually disintegrating amid the breakdown of information and trust. As time passes, the impact of the blackout goes beyond the material level, gradually eroding people's hearts. Fear, despair, and mistrust dominate, and once harmonious communities become fragmented. The brilliance of civilization fades in the darkness, and people's hearts are filled with helplessness and panic. The reason and order of the past no longer exist. I stand in the darkness, pondering how we came to this point. We pride ourselves on being the masters of civilization, yet in the moment of a blackout, we are thrown back to our most primitive state. Darkness exposes not only our technological vulnerabilities but also the fears and flaws buried deep within our hearts. As the blackout drags on, the city falls into an unprecedented standstill. The forces that once drove society forward, technology, economy, social order, seem to have been drained overnight. The blackout not only robbed the city of its light but also its confidence in the future. Many people are trapped in unemployment, businesses are closing, small shops are shutting down, and factories are at a standstill. Every corner of society is filled with anxiety and unease. Yet, amidst this darkness, I also see some glimmers of light. Despite the immense pressure from unemployment and economic distress, some people are beginning to reassess their way of life. Those who once depended on high-tech and modern devices start looking for alternatives. In some communities, people spontaneously organize temporary markets, using barter to sustain life. Without the support of electricity, they use manual tools to replace the machines of the past and rely on each other's trust to replace the broken system. Meanwhile, in the face of disorder and chaos, some people rise to try to restore order. In the communities that still remain, residents begin to cooperate, organizing night patrols to protect neighborhoods from looters. Although resources are scarce, these people believe that only by standing together can they overcome the crisis. The darkness has taught them a lesson: no matter how advanced technology is, it cannot replace the trust and cooperation between people. However, restoring social order is not easy. The blackout has caused not only material scarcity but also psychological trauma. Many people have lost loved ones, property, or even hope for life in the darkness. To get society running again, it is necessary first to rebuild trust between people. It's not just about restoring power, it's about fundamentally rethinking the systems and ways of life we rely on. When the power finally returns and the lights come back on, the city is no longer the same as before. Although the neon lights on the streets flicker once more, the anxiety and reflection lingering in the air remain. We have faced an unprecedented test and have seen the fragility of modern civilization. But we also understand that only by going through darkness can we more clearly see the direction of the light. This blackout has taught us many lessons. It has revealed our dependence on technology and shown us the shortcomings of our social systems. Most importantly, it has reminded us that no matter how advanced technology becomes, it can never replace the connection and cooperation between people. The challenges ahead may be even more daunting, but I believe that if we remember the lessons of this crisis, we can face each new dawn with greater strength and unity. The darkness will eventually pass, and what we learn from it will guide us into the future.